Hey people, sorry, we forgot to give our thoughts on the game. I guess finally getting through that nightmarish but challenging stage and getting involved by big celebratory fireworks and all that in the end kinda made me forget it. Well, personally, I like the game. I can only compare it to other online role-playing games I played, which is World of Warcraft. That's the only thing I tried. And compared to that, I'll say I felt the story was tighter. I felt more involved with it. I'm not just random dude produced in one of the starter towns. I'm Eric Cobra, hero of Tyria. I felt much more important. I felt there was much better strategy. It is not just level up, and get better gear, better gear, better gear. Leveling up, getting skill points, and getting gear is of course an important part of it, but it is not prioritized. Strategy, prioritizing targets, all of that were important parts of it. I also felt that the fact that enemies didn't respawn until you re-entered an area was a good thing. I tried World of Warcraft of enemies spawned right on top of me, and I was a mage. Another thing is some of the design, for example, being attacked melee as a mage, while not a good thing, does not interrupt your spells. There are specific things that cause interruptions and knockdowns and such. I also felt that, well, all in all, I felt it was a better experience. And there was not as much grinding, for example. There's very few quests where it's like, go out, kill 20 bears and bring their asses back to the quest giver. There were some downsides. I admit some areas got boring in the length, like the starting location of Ascalon in the desert, and some enemies were reskinned way too often. Apropos enemies, I like the very semi-original take on many things, like the Etins with their heads kind of melted together, the Minotaurs and the Griffins, who look very different yet still very samey, and those not original creations too. So yeah, that's kind of my 5 cents.
I suppose the least that should be my turn. Okay, there are some things I like and do not like about Guild Wars. Cobra basically mentioned most of the things that would actually be the better ones, and the one about that you do not have to grind for the best and most important gear in the game because you need the, well, most protective breastplate you can ever find. But still, it is an advantage if you have the best gear, but it sort of feels like going from area to area, and if you do not buy this and this and set of armor, you will sort of be screwed. So if you do not possess this big hulking chest plate, then the fire beasts are going to be tearing at your flesh.
Well, to be fair to the game, usually, except that one time in the desert, when we entered a new area where we were at a disadvantage, we could proceed and at least gain up the resources to upgrade our armor.
Yeah.
Except that one time we kept getting torn apart by the Hydras.
Yes, that is one of my points. Another thing is that Cobra pointed out the thing about also how mages fight and all that, and I had to find both a warrior and a mage because I chose that. My choice. So, yeah, it is sort of complex sometimes when you have to, you're going to slash at something with your sword, then you're going to cast this and this spell. And especially when you go like me, when you first are fire mage and you really enjoy it, and then you have to switch to water and ice to sort of attack an opponent at their weakest. And then, as I turned out to be again, an earth mage. Really just juggle what element suits to kill this and this creature. And again, that is about strategy, but I must admit, I am a simple-minded player.
Yeah, I will say, this is a matter of taste. I found it refreshing. I remember in World of Warcraft, at least that's the impression I got, because the players were, everybody I met, especially my ex, were like, you have to read up on the dungeons before you enter them. There's an optimal strategy. You have to place your skills and skill points like this. Other than that, you're a bad character. Then you have to arrange your skills like this and press these numbers, and then you win. What the fuck is the fun in that? I mean, I played it. I played some of the end dungeons of Wrath of the Lich King. I played through some of those. It was repetitive. I never got into one of the big raids because I never got good enough gear. I had to grind for that. Spend fucking weeks going through the same over and over and over again. Waiting for groups and whatnot.
Again, good point. It can be dull and it can be boring. But yeah, I also have to admit, in the end, it does not really feel rewarding because you know that you are just going to grind for the next set of ultimate gear, for then to have it replaced in the next expansion, and it goes on in an eternal cycle, like a, well, fucking hamster. But listen, the problem I had here in Guild Wars was not really all about the gear and how much armor you have. It was the fact that when you are screwed hard, and especially when we entered area like, as you, well, might have not mentioned Thirsty Pass. Well, Thirsty River.
I was also say I find it nice that you don't have to join up with other players to accomplish something. The AI, for what it is actually fairly okay, competent enough. But you can't command the group like heroes. I mean, like allies. You can't give them proper, precise directions. And I feel that is a weakness when it comes to the rig build. Most of the time, it was not a problem. But whenever it did become a problem, like Thirsty River, it was head-splittingly frustrating. So for what it is, the AI is okay and serviceable in 19 out of 20 cases. But that last one is pretty fucking frustrating. Fortunately, we only had to require outside aid once.
Yeah, but also had to mention about this entire thing where you enter areas. And I may be a bit of a crybaby now, but the fact is that when you enter an area, you find some extreme difficulty in going through it. I would love if there was some sort of checkpoint instead of saying, you might have progressed 2/3 through the level. Oh, whoops, you made one slip up. Go the fuck back, you sorry little losers. That is just a, well, bitch slap to my face, and I do not want to take it anymore.
Well, I admit that could be kind of frustrating, but most times it was not a problem. It was just very, like, again, Thirsty River and Hell's Precipice where it just became frustrating.
Also, I should probably mention that you said something about creature reskins and all that, and I should probably mention those fucking Devourers.
Yeah. But there were a lot of unique creatures, but there were some, I'll admit, that were used way too often, and then it just became, oh no, not these guys again. Even if they had different abilities and such, it's still like, oh no, Devourers again. And it was always annoying when they would spawn out of the earth because we couldn't properly prepare. I mean, it's not like we constantly got killed by such ambushes, but it's just kind of annoying to think, oh, we can walk over here, ambush. But
you know,
in all, I'll say that though the game had its annoyances and faults, it's not a perfect game by any means. I find it a distinct improvement to the formula that I saw in WoW. It's still the same base formula in many regards, but there's so many improvements that I felt this was a better game, and it is generally a good game. I liked it. It has its flaws, and it's not for everyone. But for my part, I liked it.
yeah, but also when you mentioned those things about the enemy creatures, I have to say there were one group of enemies in one area of the game where I actually thought that they are actually pretty awesome, and I think you know what I refer to.
You have to help me on that one. I'm not sure.
All right,
We've been
the skeletal legions in the swamps. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was fun.
Because I do not know, but it just feels so good in this role-playing fantasy universe to actually be beating them, well, skulls in on some skeletons. I do not know why. Maybe I just feel satisfied every time I kill one of them. But Devourers and all that, it just feels like a pest that you have to stomp just before it, well, runs up your legs and starts biting you in places you do not want to be bitten.
And every area had its Devourers. Except the last island. That didn't have any Devourers in those.
No, but it had those bloody little impish sparks of the Titans.
Yeah. Funny enough, remember, that island had both lava imps and sparks of the Titans, both pretty annoying spellcasting enemies. But we dealt with it.
Yes, and as we discovered, it was because they had most of my abilities from my time as a fire warrior, so that and they can make the ground shake, which basically stuns me, gives me a lot of damage, so I cannot tank properly.
Yeah. But did you like the game then, to sum it up?
Well, you know, I am sort of the type who goes about and give game scores and that, and I have to say, this game, if I were to really try and put my gripes aside, I would give it a, well, 4 out of 5. But if I have to keep to some of my gripes, I would give it a 3 out of 5. But then again, Guild Wars was fun to let's play, but let me just say, it is not something that you want to, for my opinion, you do not want to play Guild Wars unless you happen to have a, friend for life like Cobra here around. So if you just run around by yourself and just go about the gear and going to different areas of a town, something like that, I get the feeling it would be extremely lonesome.
Well, yeah, but the option is there. The henchmen are there after all. You'll just have to deal with one more.
Yeah, but I do not really much talk about henchmen and, adding to the group. When you are in a group, as far as I'm concerned, it is very refreshing for, say, to use your mic or something like that. Actually talk to people. Try and find a strategy. Actually socialize with people. And
well, yeah, but to be fair, I'll say you can say the same about most of the games we co-opted. Except games like Serious Sam would also be pretty fun on single. Games like Dead Island would, of course, also greatly enriched by the social aspects.
Yes, but I still do not very much think that I think Guild Wars would be very cool for a single player.
It's hard to say. We played it co-op. In any case, do you got anything else to add?
Well, there was that final battle and all that, the whole thing about the story. I can actually say something about the story.
Yeah.
I can compare the story like, let me just say, it is almost like knots on a string. When you just follow the path and you just say you need to go and do this and doing this and doing this, sometimes it got incredibly boring because the plot basically left the game for me. And when the plot returned, I was, I did not know that. Or it was something like, oh, so that is what happened while we were gone. And here, I think it's not the last part of the game, about the whole, this island and also before with the dwarfs. You actually felt like you contributed something to the world instead of just running around, oh, I need to do random stuff. But
well, I will say about the story, it's sometimes stretched out a bit. But to be fair, I think there's something refreshing about the story that I haven't really experienced other places. In most stories, you show up and you turn things for the better. You improve the situation by appearing. You have victories. It's something nice I've also seen in a few other games. But it's pretty refreshing because we actually been on the run and lost a lot in this war. We actually had losses. And we had our victories. And I find it refreshing that we're not constantly winning, we're not constantly pushing the enemy back. We actually also risk and we lose stuff. We lost homes, we lost countries. And I find that refreshing, even though the story could drag on a bit at times.
Yeah, and then I would have to say, then I have a final question for you, Cobra.
Do ask.
Of all the organizations we met, the Shining Blade, the White Mantle, do you have any of, well, you can say a favorite, one you can actually, relate to for their philosophy or something like that, or even a Morsad?
Well, we don't know any of the organizations good, but for what it's worth, I really liked the Shining Blades, who kind of took up the war against their own people, in fact, in order to do what they felt was right.
You can respect that.
Yeah.
So can I, although I thought for a moment that the White Men were actually the good guys.
Well, so did we. It's actually funny, think how much we've been stabbed in the back in this Let's Play. In any case, this oh, sorry, did you have anything to add?
Yes, I was just thinking about when you said being backstabbed. This whole thing about being backstabbing, I do not mean to offend your class as being a Death Keeper, but why don't I get the feeling that mages or rather warlocks or would-be conquerors like that, they usually use their magic or their guile or their manipulation. You never just see a warrior just, other than that dwarven...
Well, what you have to understand is that the connection is the right one, but it goes the other way. It is not that warlocks are manipulators. If the manipulators becomes warlocks. Guys that want to conquer the world, what kind of men do you think they're going to take up? The kind where they can raise a graveyard full of warriors, or the kind where they can mend wounds and cure you of your cancer?
Probably the one that raises entire legions from the graveyard.
Exactly, which is why my job has a rather bad reputation, because it draws that kind of people to it.
Well, my job is basically just stand there and take blow after blow and try and get you guys, if I may be so honest, out of situations that will normally crack your skulls wide open.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Hapley and one of the White Mantle leaders was a warrior.
Also, I have to say there's at least one thing I can, well, add to the credit.
And now that I think about it, Confessor Dorian was a priest, so there's kind of been villains of all classes actually. Well, maybe not all the big ones were different classes, but whatever.
Yeah.
Continue.
Also, that Stone Summit leader, he was also a warrior, so that is...
No, he was a sorcerer. I mean, elementalist.
Well, then at least there was that white mental guy that we faced in the desert. No, not the desert, I mean the jungle.
Yeah, that was Haplion. He was a warrior.
Yeah, not really the greatest pride to my class. But at least I have to say one thing about you, if you pardon me this expression, Necromancer. But excuse me a moment while I return. I just heard my doorbell ring.
Well, do I have anything more to add? Otherwise, I will end.
I have nothing more.
Okay. Well, then this has been Aarakocra.
Brown and Araja.
And this has been Let's Play Guild Wars Blind. See you around, folks.